it's been 40 days exactly since the new war was launched on Tigray. 40 days today. Okay. In the last 40 days, Tigrayan Defense Forces have been attacked from 16 different positions from Eritrea and Amhara region. 16 different positions. What the TDF has done is, and from the Afar region, just recently, 5 Eritrean division, which were the more advanced division through Barahale and Abela, which is the Afar region closer to Mekelle, were attempting to cross into Mekelle, brought in T-72 tanks. T-72 tanks are the most sophisticated tanks, obviously utilized in today's warfare, and they were given to Isaias Afwerki by Ethiopia. Eritrea does not have advanced tanks to utilize. 16 of those Eritrean tanks were actually destroyed by TDF. In the last few days, many Eritreans have been captured. And we know in some of the statements given by the captured soldiers from Ethiopia and Eritrea, the new order has been nothing different than the previous one, which is to not arrest anybody, but to execute everybody and anybody they come in contact in Tigray when, in fact, they enter into Tigray. So that's what the 698 or 699 days look like for Tigrayans. It's a living nightmare. To sum up, like my point, in addition to the 5 Eritrean division being decimated, 16 tanks completely destroyed so far. Over 10,000 Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers have been captured. Over 10,000 in the last 40 days. More than 93 Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers have been wounded, killed, or dispersed, meaning they have run away from their positions. 93 plus thousand. Okay, that's in 40 days. Tomorrow is Monday. Ethiopia is preparing to deploy 28,000 newly trained fighters into Waldea, which is where TDF is fighting Fano and PP, and of course, elements of Eritrean forces in that city. So the backup plan is that in Addis Ababa, they've been bringing, like at nighttime, they've been loading up the soldiers so that the communities doesn't get a chance to see the level of scrutinies. So that's what's happening in the capital in Addis. In the Amhara region, the Amhara regional government announced that they need 1 million young people to come to Western Tigray because it is approaching toward the end of crop season. So they're telling them that it's time to take care of some of the crops in Western Tigray. So we need you in this farm. Now we discover that many of those people who are signing up to go to farming are finding themselves actually being trained for less than a week of military training, basic training, given weapons to then come back to Tigray through Eritrea, through Afar, through the Amhara region to fight. So in a sense, the Amhara regional government thinks that by putting 1 million people to fight, imagine, you will defeat Tigray. And 698 days means that we are approaching month 23 now. We are on the 23rd month of 2-year basically approaching. The efforts tried. When Ethiopia and Eritrea invaded Tigray, we had a number that, according to the United States declassified information released, it was clear that the number that I had was shocking because nobody will believe, but I had to reprocess myself. And is this true when it was reported? So Eritrea, before the war, had 250 active military before Tigray war started November 4th, 2020. 250,000. As the war elevated, Eritrea maxed out to 400,000 fighters. And this includes people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. That's a maximum ability that Eritrea is able to do. Ethiopia brought in combined Amhara, Afar, Oromo, who support PP, combined, organized since November 4th, 2020, till now, the counted number is 600,000 Ethiopians. Eritrea, with the support of Ethiopia, brought in fighting vehicles, tanks, and altogether nearly 400 of them. Ethiopia brought in nearly 600 of those. 75% of Ethiopian tanks and fighter vehicles and buses and what have you have been either destroyed in Tigray or captured when Abiy Ahmed's forces were unmatched to TDF in most of the Tigray region. That was Eritrea. We don't have a figure what percentage of the troops in Eritrea and tanks have been destroyed, because it was more under Ethiopian uniform for the most part. So those who were destroyed or killed in the fight often were not necessarily 100% accounted as Eritreans, because Eritrea has been systematically having Eritrean forces wear Ethiopian military uniform. So it becomes, to the deceased ones, it became that complicated to identify them as Eritreans. But we know from the captured ones, the interviews that's been given, many Eritreans has perished in Tigray. And as we see today, that's back. Fast forward, the 16 different routes that Tigray was and is under attack supposedly. We know that Aderkai, which is southwest of Tigray, is now 100% under TDF. TDF is pushing towards Debarak, which is in its way towards Gondar. The Eritrean forces that have tried through Zalambesa, Rama, and of course the two Eritrean Afari fronts, they have been unable to do that. I will not disclose a location, but we do have TDF at this point at about 4 different positions inside Eritrea. Well, I can tell you.
Well, Mickey Tigray, thank you so much for that update. I've got several questions for you, and then I think that there are some individuals that want to join the conversation. If you want to join the conversation, go ahead and hit that link. We would like to know, who is Abiy Ahmed and why is he destroying Ethiopia? And then I would like to know from you, Mickey Tigray, what is it that the ordinary individual has that would send them to want to risk their lives coming from Eritrea or from different parts of Ethiopia, knowing that, maybe they might be fighting for a paycheck, but who is funding that? And how do they think they are going to fare, and they haven't been faring well, with individuals who are fighting because their mothers are being raped, their daughters are being raped, their people are being starved. You know what I mean? They have no access to outside communication. The actual will to fight under those circumstances, you can just imagine you would fight a lion and win, or defeat an elephant. What is the impetus for someone coming from Eritrea? What is their motivation other than this nurtured hatred of Tigray? However, they were raised to hate Ethiopia. So how do they shift from all of a sudden, I like Ethiopia and I'll just fight the Tigaru? Like, where are these fighters getting their will to fight? And is the hatred of Tigray and even the Oromo, etc., that intense that they would fight? And give us an update about what's happening in Oromia, because they're also fighting.
So, with regards to Eritrean fighters, I think based on the interviews, based on the intel internal that we are getting a full understanding of what Eritrean position, Eritrean fighters, is that at least so far, many of them, including high-rank Eritrean fighters who have been captured, they honestly, I was having a hard time believing when most Eritreans say these fighters, Eritrea is under tight scrutiny under Isaias Afwerki, they don't have outside information, and that Eritreans genuinely do not want to fight with Tigray. I was having a hard time believing until I started getting more information, but also watching some of the captured Eritrean soldiers. It is clear to me that the hate that they've been taught and the training that's been given to them, even to not be captive, is that it is indoctrinated in their mind to hate. Where Brother Jeff is a good person, but then if I just told my like those who believe me that no, don't trust Brother Jeff because Brother Jeff has got intention to destroy me and to destroy my wealth and my home and my family and everything. I am systematically using these things that doesn't even exist to brainwash and manipulate many of these Eritrean soldiers to believe that they genuinely Tigray is after them, when in fact it's not. So how we correct that is that some of the interview that are the Tigray government right now is doing a pretty good job of bringing these people to the media and having them just like freely talk. However, they see it as eye awakening to the Eritrean community around the globe. So the fight is not necessarily always using weapon, but it's also being smart about educating the community. So the diaspora, the Eritrean diaspora, for example, Friday, October 7th, they are planning to have a big protest in Washington, D.C. in front of the State Department against the continuous genocide in Tigray. The Eritrean Orthodox Church just released a statement strongly condemning the attack in Adidaro that I mentioned earlier. So I think the more like religious leaders, community leaders, and community in general, Eritreans around the globe fully understands what their family are facing, forcefully being rounded up to the Eritrean military and coming to Tigray to fight. We see that already now. They are showing similarly what the Ethiopian military is showing, which is they are more and more willing to be captured, willing to give up the fight, because they're saying it publicly, basically now in an interview, that we don't have a mission to fight in Tigray. Because if Tigray was, coming to us and fighting us, we would even understand this indoctrination, these lies that we've been told, and when we are given orientation, that what we've been told versus how we are experiencing it, we are told that women will be raped, men will be like slaughtered, and all these things. But what actually happened to us is that they're just treating us like better than they take care of their own self. There's shortage of food, clothing, and medicine. But when we are, some of our wounded soldiers, they've been treated. We've been fed. One of the Eritrean soldier the other day, just a couple of days ago, was talking how he actually needed like a pair of clothes that he didn't have. They gave it to him. The TDF had actually offered him clothes to change to. This is, the magnitude, Brother Jeff. We are in a society where information is within our fingertip. Eritrea is just like North Korea in a sense where information from inside and outside is not available to the community. But Eritreans in the diaspora, they have the power to do several things. Number one, to severe and stop supporting financially to Isaias Afwerki. That will dismantle him. Number one, because without money, you can't buy weapons. Without money, you can't fund your war. And then number two, they have loved ones, they have family, I'm sure, that they talk to, that are drafted to the front or whatnot. So when they're speaking to them, they can be clear that if they are turning themselves into TDF, that they will not be going through what Isaias Afwerki is telling them. So with the Eritrean false indoctrination to be told something that doesn't exist, Tigray people, Tigray government, TDF, doesn't have issue with Eritrean ordinary people. Our issue or our problem is with Isaias Afwerki, the military of Eritrea. That is, what they've done in Tigray. We have every right to fight them. Right now, we're fighting them in our own turf. But tomorrow, that will shift. It's already shifted, and we've seen that. So that's with Eritrea. In regards to Oromia, the Oromo Liberation Army is... So they're making a lot of progress, particularly now that Ethiopia is focused its military resources. About 75 to 80% of Ethiopia's military is focused on Tigray right now. Imagine 75 to 80%. It's focused on Tigray. So that leaves with 20 to 25% of Ethiopia's military and strength and whatnot focused to fight the Oromo Liberation Army. So the Oromo Liberation Army actually have more ability to fight even harder from what I heard, like, I was on the phone just this morning. I'm hearing that in some pockets of in the South, the Oromo Liberation Army, they are within 25 to 30 kilometers from the Ethiopian capital. And I'm hearing also some nights, like somebody was telling me, like almost every night there's a gunfire going on in the capital, in Addis. Almost every few days, there's usually like, a few businesses or government infrastructure, like, actually put on fire and burn. This is in the capital, imagine. And then just 2 days ago, or yesterday, it was when the Oromos were celebrating their tradition holiday, and Jawar Muhammad was there, and he had to be escorted out like very fast because he was confused and shocked too. What the young Oromo, they call them Kero, which is the amazingly energetic, young, brilliant Oromos, rose up, and they were saying basically that down to Abiy wasn't just the only thing they've said. They're talking about they are with the people of Tigray. They are against the genocide and the siege in Tigray. I'm talking in Addis, and I'm talking massive of them. And so that was incredible. We do know that the Ethiopian police took swift action to those who were protesting, and so far, 3 people have lost their lives, and the amount of wounded, we don't know because many of them are scared to go get treatment in the hospital. So, but we do know that Ethiopian police have killed 3 for simply voicing their concerns about Tigray. So I do want to acknowledge and appreciate to the Oromo community who has been with us for 698 days, and in number 697 or 98, depending what part of the world you are, they rose up while they're celebrating their holiday. They shifted that celebration into speaking for Tigray, being the voice for the people of Tigray. And these are the kind of people that we will never, as Tagaru, we will never forget, who fought, who stood with us for peace, stability, and for our people in Tigray to have the right to exist, the right to have medicine, the right to have meal, the right to send their children to school, and not to be bombed where they're just sleeping in their home. What happened in Adidaro.
There's a lot of media out right now. There's an article in the New Yorker, and there's some op-eds that talk about the Nobel Peace Prize winner Abiy Ahmed going from peacemaker to pariah. It seems like now the media and others are seeing exactly what individuals were able to see with Tedros. He was first heralded as someone who was a champion and dealing with so-called modern values and human rights, and he just turned out to be, a gruesome murderer. And you're just seeing the same history playing out with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Traditionally, Ethiopia, as we know it, has been used as stability for the West. In other words, there's this whole dynamic about terrorism. And, oftentimes that word allows, repressive behaviors to be tolerated. With Abiy Ahmed spending and sending so much troops, focusing on his own people, how at risk is Ethiopia to collapse from, say, for example, Al-Shabaab, or those coming from, Sudan or Somalia or other parts of the world? Isn't the door wide open? Like, don't other foreign governments say, you know what, they couldn't stop the small Tagaru community. I know they can't stop us. Like, Abiy Ahmed had to go get Eritrea because he knew he couldn't handle the Tagaru without, a foreign force. How at risk is Ethiopia to outside sources coming in, doing what they've wanted to do for quite a long time?
Well, so first of all, just a few days ago, high U.S. government officials that happen to be in Addis heard about the Oromo Liberation Army being within 25 to 30 kilometers from Addis, and TDF pushing in Waldia. From what I heard is that some American are actually packing up and leaving Addis right now, because I think it's a matter of time before Abiy Ahmed is thrown out of power. But you talked about Somalia. So right now, Abiy Ahmed is trying to sweeten a deal with the new Somalian elected government to pay him so that he can be silent, but also he can try to send him some troops while 5 to 10,000 Somalians are still in Eritrea with the Eritrean army that Isaias Afwerki has refused to send those back unless Somalia pays $50 million for the training that it has provided for those troops from Somalia. So it's the irony of it. Anyway, so how vulnerable is Ethiopia at this time? Well, put it this way, Brother Jeff. Al-Shabaab is in Ethiopia right now, 150 kilometers deep inside Ethiopia. 150 kilometers, okay, deep inside Ethiopia. And when Al-Shabaab came and conquered and took over like many villages and cities in eastern Ethiopia, Ethiopia immediately say TDF is working with Al-Shabaab to do that. So imagine, let's put it this way. Let's say you're in Texas and I am in, Seattle, Washington, and there's no telecommunication, there's no banking system, there's nothing going on. And somehow you can actually coordinate something from Texas to someone that's in Seattle with any kind of communication. And then it's easy for this failure so-called government of Ethiopia to blame. So the point is, what Al-Shabaab is not, it's not because Al-Shabaab is strong that Al-Shabaab is 150 kilometers inside Ethiopia, but it's because Ethiopia is not just vulnerable. Ethiopia, anyone who can form like a couple thousand fighters to go take land from Ethiopia right now, Djibouti for that matter. Djibouti came in and took some military action, and Ethiopia did nothing to. And imagine, Djibouti is I mean, I hate to say this, but it's one of the weakest country in the Horn of Africa that cannot fight anybody because it doesn't have the strength, the military ability to do anything. Kenya can cross over and take any territory it wants. Sudan, we know, but I have to be honest, I'm biased. Sudan, I support what it does because Sudan will not go into any part of Ethiopia. So there was a land that was made a deal between Omar al-Bashir and Prime Minister Meles Zenawi that the disputed territory between Ethiopia and Sudan, they agreed that all farmers live in that area will be allowed to live in peace and harmony and not to have to deal with the territorial disputes if you have free access from both sides. And that was it worked wonderfully for the past 20 something years. Well, given what's happening, Sudan decided to claim a lot of its territories and more. And so in the Amhara elite's mindset, this is how arrogant they are. As long as they can just defeat TDF or Tigray, they really think that they can come back later, defeat Sudan, and then they can really think they can go to Eritrea and fight Eritrea and defeat Eritrea and take the Red Sea to them. And then they can, really govern Ethiopia because then they can go back to Oromia and get rid of the Oromo Liberation Army. So all in all, Ethiopia, unfortunately, and because of the lack of leadership, is dismantled indirectly, and the U.S. lacks the full understanding of Ethiopia's politics, Ethiopia's ethnic, Ethiopia's culture, and the indigenous people, and the Tigray people who have contributed to the Ethiopia's economy, Ethiopia's military for hundreds and hundreds of years throughout colonialism. And I think the lack of America's failed foreign policy, that the Horn of Africa, it's not just Ethiopia, by the way, to your question, it's the entire Horn of Africa that will remain the most destabilized if America and Europe continues to be biased. And lastly, I will tell you, Germany just announced today that they are getting ready to supply Ukraine anti-drones and anti-jets to basically help to fund this war that's happening in Ukraine. Yet they're not even willing to take economic sanctions against Ethiopia and Eritrea to stop this fighting. They're not willing to tell those countries like Turkey, Iran, United Arab Emirates, who buys their drones from the United States and uses it in Tigray, that we will not tolerate this behavior. Why? Because America's policy is a failed one, and America doesn't fully understand the dynamic and the crisis in the Horn of Africa, this impact failure to save this atrocity in Tigray will have a lasting impact to the Horn of Africa, not just the Tigray people, because the Tigray people are rosen, and Tigray people will no longer be, told what to do by Abiy Ahmed, by Isaias Afwerki, and their followers, obviously.